Uta here with a big bouquet of mostly phlox, Jowie Winnie dahlias, little roses, and a zinnia. And I can report to you that, and there's a sweet pea. I'm going to turn it around so we can have that one in the frame. Yeah, that was climbing up the garden fence. We'll just do it like that. And now this is, of course, YouTube channel Trans Widow Uta Hagen for especially collecting the data of the ex-wives of men who went into, usually rather suddenly, went into this cross-dressing kind of captured ideology um, that outside of our world is known as the trans ideology. I call it the cross-sex ideation ideology because I like more accurate descriptors rather than vague descriptors like gender and trans and it's all identity politics. It's a political, more so than a medical diagnosis. And we're seeing some really outrageous references made about it and claims made about it. So this is Mona. Uh, she is trans widow number 46 to answer my 20 questions to ask a trans widow survey, where I am collecting the only data in the world being collected on us ex-wives. And I suppose that some people might say that, oh, this is so biased and this, you don't have the people who stayed happily or something like that. And the truth is, I am specifically collecting the data in an organized way on we women who left because many of us did sort of stay if he detransitioned or he was pretending that it wasn't as big of a deal as it turned out to be, and then he escalated. So, documenting our experiences and through us, the experiences of the trans orphans, the children of, who are often traumatized and just feel, as Emma Bryn says, they feel used as props. So, this is Mona, a trans widow testimony. So this is the question of whether was it a revelation or a discovery that you made. She calls her ex Sandy. Sandy's cross-dressing wasn't really a surprise to me, as when we were dating, he wanted to do my laundry and wanted to see a certain kind of women's lingerie, and it turns out that wasn't in her laundry. So that was a little bit of a red flag, but often if the person is, in general, being charming and seems otherwise put together, then you just put that to the side. So also he said that he is bisexual. He often, okay, now, okay, I'm just going to continue with this. I'm not sure, it doesn't exactly answer any of my questions because in my questions, I try to focus more on our experiences than their habits. And so therefore, I didn't say, in your opinion, did he have a pornography addiction? But here's a little bit about that from Mona. He often mentioned his previous girlfriend had problems with his porn consumption, and he mischievously admitted he liked to be naughty. She didn't witness him doing public cross-dressing, But over the years, his spending on fetish items became more and more offensive to her. And he complained about the cost of their child, a son. Yet, he was buying lingerie and dresses and, get this, eventually rubber pants. So apparently, he went into this uh, diaper fetish. This was after uh, she said it, after she had said, "We're done." He acknowledged that he had lived with drag queens for some time in his early life and was involved with some, aha, prostitution in San Francisco where he grew up. I don't have the information on exactly what capacity. Let's see, they did not really have a joint therapist, so there wasn't somebody saying, you are lesbians now. However, it's apparent that he had bipolar disorder, and it seems like bipolar is the one that comes up frequently. Sometimes OCD and ADD also come up as so-called comorbidities or coexisting conditions. He had a kind of jokey attitude about the therapy. They both went into some individual therapy because of problems in the marriage, and he just was kind of not taking it seriously. Okay, so years later, after our son was born and weaned, our insurance provider did not allow for couples counseling, and we went over a year to individual therapists. And okay, he he did not mention to his therapist that the reason that both of them were going to therapy, at least initiated by Mona, was that there was a lack of intimacy, of physical sexual intimacy in their relationship. There was there was some kind of a joint session where they got everybody together, the two therapists and the two of them, and she asked him, what have you been talking about in this therapy if you're not talking about this problem that we have? And he said, stuff like cars and sports. Okay. Um, so she knew about the cross dressing, and she had been willing to dress him up in a wig and do his makeup, she said on one occasion. We didn't leave the house, and he was quite chagrined to see that, as he said, I make an ugly woman. Oh gosh, and another thing where the therapist is telling you to be flattered. When I related this story to my therapist, she commended me for being so extraordinarily compassionate and also seemingly solving the problem, as he then, at that point, he was moving away from the cross-sex ideation. Um, hmm. Okay, this was around 2003, so about 20 years ago. And of course, he's an adult. He's well into adulthood. He didn't talk too much about really, this idea that he was ideating about being a woman. But she found out later he was logging into websites and taking quizzes, the equivalent of Glamour magazine. He had occasional dalliances with other cross-sex ideating men. That's not safe for her. And he asked for an address so he could send a woman, I guess, who claimed to be pregnant. He wanted to send her a gift, so Mona found out about this, contacted the person, and explained she would not be getting Jack something. She apologized profusely, totally unaware I existed, of course. In addition, I did at one point voluntarily, perhaps under coercion, use a dildo on him in a reversal role play. So that counts, even if it's one time. She was coerced or cajoled, or it was suggested to her that she try this out. And she did it once. Good for her. That she only did it once. That's what I mean. I should mention that, as near as I could tell, he was not able to be intimate with any of these flirtations. Okay, so he had impotence. Uh, and she, their sex life kind of was the desert. Uh, oh, gosh. So, okay, so apparently there are these um, locations in typically in men's rooms, but in bathrooms in uh, some public restroom where a hole has been chipped in the wall and people try to anonymously have sex through it, and it's called a glory hole. Uh, okay, who knows? Nettie might have been doing stuff like that 30 years ago. Okay, he came home upset from engaging in whatever that is, and he was worried about that he had lost his wallet, but then he always found the wallet. Oh gosh, you've got to get away from this. It's not safe. He had a secret account, but a few years into the marriage, his mother died and left him a significant inheritance. And it was in his name, and they lived partially from that while she stayed home with their young child. And at that point, she wasn't monitoring that account until, okay, so Mona is apparently his third wife. I found a handwritten letter to his ex-wife. He had torn it up and she taped it together. Uh, And she mentions that she thinks she could do that without his knowledge because he was a binge drinker and was passed out. So, this sometimes is part of the picture too, and it's just not brought up because everything else is so crazy. But any of these guys, it doesn't sound like this guy was really going to say an affirming therapist and trying to get hormones or get on the path for surgeries, but um, this idea that he might be on illegal drugs, which seems to be connected, according to quite a few of our trans widows responding, and then the drinking. I mean, uh, that's in a significant minority of the 46 of us that he drank a lot. Um, Okay, he had been writing checks to his ex-wife, and according to the letter, was involved in it's hard for me to say this, in a submissive humiliation relationship with her. So, I mean, she's sort of like um, another trans widow, just even in um, this same one guy's life. She totaled up these checks that he had written to her, and it was about 8,000. And so then she insisted on making this inherited account be in her name. Okay, he was occasionally violent, particularly when he was under the influence of alcohol. So I'm asking her for a little more information about that because I specifically want to know if you've been assaulted or if you've been menaced. Menacing being that he threw something near you, something like that. And the truth is, but when I think about it, in some ways I was menaced. He threw things. He threw things in anger. He demonstrated his anger. Um, to be honest, I haven't really thought about it that way because it never was really like aimed at me. But it was the kind of thing that I wanted him to stop because, the children might wake up or something. It's really too much. Okay, after we were separated, he used his card and other cards, other credit cards, to burn into $50,000 in debt, went through $50,000 in retirement that he cashed in early, and some kind of $100,000 of investment that he had accumulated from his job. And then he quit that job in order to become a social justice warrior. Like, okay, is he hanging around with teenage girls who think they're boys at some alphabet, center that's basically a public place? Um, we don't know this. I'm just asking. Okay. Then she did get the home under her name after uh, the separation. And she says, I will pause here because that's a lot already and I'm tired. Um, yeah. And he kind of dropped off from, contact with him. There were other people in his family who had bipolar um, diagnoses. So there seemed to be a number of people, like a cousin and a daughter from a previous marriage, who had the bipolar problem. Uh, okay, thank you for providing this outlet. It's been so long that I've held these stories in. It feels bizarre to form them into a narrative now. That's often the case because we are silenced. We are discouraged from telling our true tales. Um, Okay, the last thing, perhaps most tellingly, Sandy himself recalled to me that when he was a prepubescent child, so maybe 10 or 11, um, ooh, at the beach, he became aroused at the sight of a nearby mother whose son of seemingly equal age had wet his pants, and she loudly chastised him for it while making him remove his swim trunks down to his flowered cotton underpants. Now, if the kid had a continence problem or uh, some kind of um, urinary problem, why is he a boy being put into some kind of flowered underwear? I mean, we don't know. It could have been just that this kid went through a lot of clothes and they had to stick him into his older sister's hand-me-downs. So, Mona, my dear, I really want to hear the rest, which I will put into Trans Widow Testimony, Mona, Part 2. And this is the end of Part 1. Be sure to stop and smell the flowers and count the butterflies. Thank you. We're almost up to 1,300 subs and over 100,000 views.